Hi, everybody, and welcome to Signature West Podcast. I'm your host, Sam West from Palm Springs, California. As you know, I'm a seasoned real estate agent since 1991, and I've been with the podcast to bring you inspiring stories. Today is no exception. Not because who my guest is and what we're going to talk about, but the fact that she is one of us. She lives here in Palm Springs. She's local, which is very rare for me. So I'm really excited about that. And I hope you are as well. So say hi to Heidi Adams. Hi, Heidi.
Hello, nice to be here, Sam.
You're welcome. Happy Fourth.
Exactly.
Happy
It's a
Fourth.
nice big weekend. I'm
Yep.
looking forward to it.
Yep. And
Yes,
here we are
it's a
working
good
away.
celebration.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Um, you have a very extensive, interesting background. You were born in Germany. You were raised in Florida. You went to School of Design, Architect, in Rhode Island, and you worked in film and product design. And then life goes on. And 3 years ago, you decided to move to Palm Springs, which
Yeah.
I'm always curious. There's always a story why people move here. I have my own story, but we're not going to get into that right now. Why did you decide to move here 3 years ago?
I had been coming to the desert for about 10 years. A friend of ours owned a house in Palm Springs, and so I visited often, and they were never here in the summer. Their house was completely available. And that's one of the times that I really like the desert. I know people kind of cringe and go, but isn't it hot? It's amazing. It's so beautiful. It's so quiet. And so, we would take their house in August and or July and just be there for a month.
That's
And
brutal. That's brutal.
it was just beautiful. And so doing that many, many years and also other times of the year, being out here, it got to the point where when I sold my place in Los Angeles, I wanted to buy out in Palm Springs. And, so we looked all over the valley and were able to find a place in the Mesa, and that's where we landed.
And obviously you like it.
I do. I do. We're up against the mountains. It's really
Yeah.
beautiful. Yes.
Yeah. I grew up in LA and I left in 15 before you. I can't even imagine. No offense to LA people. I grew up in LA. I loved LA, but can't imagine. Can't imagine. Um,
But now this is your home.
yeah, and it's also I couldn't live here in my 40s. I needed the grind, I needed the
Yeah.
noise, I needed the hustle, which was a different noise than it is now.
Mm.
So it kind of worked out perfect. I got older and the noise got worse. So time to go.
Stepped away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty why we're here, I want you to tell us about the time that you were trapped into a fire evacuation situation when you had no lights, no power, and no Wi-Fi.
Yeah, that was a pretty scary one. I was dog sitting for a friend up in Malibu when the Woolsey fire broke out 2018. Woke up that morning, complete darkness in the house, no lights, no cell service, no nothing. You don't even know what time it was. And I was like, okay, I'll just run down and get some coffee. We knew the fire had been close by when we went to sleep that night, but you just don't know. So I was like, I'll get some coffee. I had to work that day. It was a Friday. Got in the car to drive down the hill and could hear on the radio that the fire had jumped the 101 freeway and was in the Malibu mountains. And I was like, good, that means we have to go, at least, So I went back, grabbed the dog, my husband, we climbed in the car, and we headed away from where we knew the fire last was, which was the 101 freeway. So went down to PCH and got caught in 6 hours of traffic for a 12-mile drive with no cell service, no information. And we had a wall of mountains on one side, as PCH has. And it's that area where you have the wall of houses, just 2 stories, just solid houses, and black fire clouds overhead, and cars just piled on that road. And if the fires had shifted, all those cars would have burned. And that's really what precipitated the thought about, why does our infrastructure fail when you need it most? Whether it's a hurricane, tornado, Arctic blast, heat wave, flood, fire, storm, doesn't really matter. It always goes away and you're left with no services. Then that's probably because our infrastructure was built over a century ago. That's when it was designed, that's when it was put into play, and it hasn't really been upgraded. And with the new reality of what our weather is, what climate is bringing more and more, we need to look at upgrading that. We need to look at changing how we protect people. Yeah.
But when you were in that situation, which obviously is not very safe and it's not very, peaceful,
Yeah.
did your mind go to survival mode, or did your mind go, hey, how can I fix the future?
It goes into survival mode at that moment. You couldn't call anybody, you couldn't say
Right,
goodbye to any of your family. It was just my husband and I in the car, looking at all the other cars around you. It wasn't like Hawaii where they could run into the ocean because
right.
there's no way we could get over the houses. And we saw in the last LA fires that the Palisades, had cars burn. And it's because the traffic signals go out and it causes a traffic jam. And really in 2020, Caltrans reached out to us to try to help solve this problem. How could they keep their traffic signals on with batteries and solar? But after 10 years, they still haven't made any changes to that infrastructure, which is why we saw cars burn in the Palisades, because no changes had been made. And,
But why did they reach out to you in the first place?
because of what we're building, because our new type of street light that keeps the lights on during power failures. Yep.
So this was already sort of like the idea was not to get an idea when this whole thing started. So everybody that listen, watching can
Okay.
understand.
Yeah.
So this was a it was in the
Nope.
works. No,
No. 2018 is when I experienced the Woolsey fire. 2020 is when the city of Los Angeles had a street lighting competition,
right?
and a friend dogged me to submit a design, and we were one of the 5 finalists. And that early design is what Caltrans responded to and thought it could be of benefit to them. And yeah,
And that was 2010,
that was 2020.
20. So what happened after that?
So we've been working through the design and building it out and getting patents and really honing it. It started in aluminum. It's now an advanced composite that doesn't corrode. It's stronger than steel, so it can withstand, the floods and the fires and the storms. It's got a really large battery in it, so it actually can power homes during blackouts. So for the Coachella Valley, which we get blackouts all the time, it means 1,000 of our poles can store enough energy to power 700 homes during a 4-hour blackout. Now that's pretty substantial. And it also can keep the Wi-Fi on during that time period. So that's why, for communities like the Coachella Valley, our innovation could be really significant. You have to balance that though. In the Valley, we love our dark skies. And I am a dark sky advocate. I think Los Angeles is overlit. And particularly Compton is at CIA levels, tortured levels of lighting in Compton that they put in the 1980s. But does the Coachella Valley potentially need like a corridor? Is that the 111 where you can go when there's a power outage and get Wi-Fi and get light and get energy? Do we need a corridor like that can sustain us through evacuations and disasters and power outages, cooling, things like that?
I guess I'm trying to go into your head. So the idea was in your head. You have obviously creative mind, so that's always running. It's always trying to figure out, what's next.
Yeah.
And you're living in LA then, and the idea is brewing, and they contact you, and they don't get back to you, and then you moved to Palm Springs for obviously different reasons 3 years ago. At what point did you say, I'm going to start doing this? Was it before you moved to Palm Springs?
Yes, before.
Okay.
So I
And
launched the company in 2020. I did. And that's when we filed for our first patent. I think my first patent was awarded in 2021. And it's just been slowly growing since then.
right.
As the more I learn, the more I hone, and the more we work, through the design and the prototype, it evolved in that process.
And when
Yeah.
you were starting this, did you, because there's a reason why I'm going that direction, because it's always been had it in my mind. I wanted to ask you in person. When you started this process, did you think about, okay, where I'm going to have this made? Because now did you get that far yet, or was you were still in the
I knew
playground?
I wanted it American made. It was
Okay.
important to me that it was manufactured where the jobs would be significant.
Right.
The product itself is significant, but the other big thing that I'm building is this company, and that company needs to benefit people. To go off on a small tangent, you know, again, built 100 years ago is how we learned how to do companies. And that's been the United States protocol, which has got us into, we could say, this climate situation.
Mhm.
In my opinion, businesses need to change how they treat people, how we treat the environment, how we move forward. Um, and so part of what I'm building is that company that will stand differently than, make choices differently. So American made was something that I valued. And when 3 years ago, when I moved out here, I was also at the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator, which,
Mhm.
yep. And I met a man who also fabricates out in Palm Springs. He's building electric trucks out here, the semis. And he works in the same material I do. And we're both working in batteries. And so it was like, okay, let's join together and fabricate in the valley where it could have big impact.
So now, for the ones that are listening, so now this product is being made here,
Yes. In Palm Springs in the Coachella Valley.
which is like,
Yeah.
it just blows my mind. It just blows my mind. Um, it's a very gutsy move, I think, um, especially in California. Out of all the states in the country, it's California. Um, and
Well, I kind of disagree.
Please,
Having gone through Lacey, they cultivate a lot of businesses and a lot of innovations. And one of the biggest challenges they have is keeping them in California. They grow and you're still young and you're not generating enough revenue to be able to support yourself in California. So they often leave and go to Texas or they
correct,
go to North Carolina.
correct.
Um, and so I actually was talking with Sean and Scott at the Economic Development Office of Greater Palm Springs saying, let's build a relationship with you guys, with Lacey, so that the Valley could be an alternative that companies look at when they need to find a more economic place. It would still keep the revenue and it would still keep the labor force here. And that could be a really great balance.
Which the question I have for Sean, I'm going to ask you the same question.
Yeah.
And he kind of, if you watch the episode, if you guys want to go, it's like 3 weeks ago, you can watch it. I
Okay.
said to Sean, who thought that Palm Springs could become the ground zero for technology?
Right. Yeah.
So I know his answer. What's your answer? Or what do
Yeah.
you think that is? He gave me his answer.
You know, we're a part of Palm Springs Next.
Right,
That just happened, which is a
right.
focus around AI and the good and the bad of AI, and how to focus that use. And I think and this is the fastest growing region in California, and a lot of people are moving here with great brain trust. Coming from corporations that have done amazing things, and they get to the valley and want to expand their capacity here. And so I think we're seeing a real turning point for the Coachella Valley with the new influx of people and minds that could be really beneficial to how we develop this area. Yeah.
I have to tell you, that was similar to what he said. I have to tell
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I think that's what we're really seeing.
Yeah. First he laughed and then he kind of gave a similar answer.
Well, and I think they might probably even said the same thing. You have this really strong brain trust, but then you look at our schools and you look at the children in the schools and their income levels are at 50,000 a year and they're, borderline poverty. And that's where if we can get these two worlds to work together on workforce development and building industries here, that would go a long way.
and knowing that I guess you lived in LA, and other places, um, and although I still believe that the Coachella Valley is a bubble in its own way, because of the size of it, but yet there's so much going on in this little bubble. It's so crazy how so much can be happening in one place that's so small. So I'm still, me personally, I mean, I don't know much about your world, but I'm still struggling that this, to what you said and to what Sean said, obviously you know more than I do, that this is actually happening here. I'm trying to wrap my brain around it. But of course you know, you guys know more, and it's more, um, it's very fascinating. If I would have heard that somebody said to me, guess what? In 2026, this is going to be happening. I said, oh, you're dreaming. Like not in Palm Springs. It's just not in the
Right.
valley. It's just not equipped. It's not
It's
ready. It doesn't have,
town.
yeah, it doesn't have what it takes, but I guess I'm wrong.
I think it's growing it, you know, and is that 2 years or is that 5 years? You know, yes, you know. But I think the proximity to bigger areas like Riverside, you know, being part of Riverside County, but then just crossing over and being in Riverside and some of those big cities, and then easily into LA and even San Diego gives this valley a strong proximity for distribution of whatever it's building here.
So give us a short, quick run again for the ones that I don't know if you guys missed what we're talking about here, but just want to make clear, we're talking about street lights that are very resilient that can obviously operate in case of any. First of all, saves money. Am I correct?
Yep.
A lot
They
of money.
generate revenue. They
Generate
generate revenue.
revenue, which you can talk about that. So that's what we're talking about here, and this is what Heidi Company does. So walk us through, you know, a city wants to order a few, I don't know, for the new shopping center on Sunrise.
Yeah. Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, just like, you know, ordering anything, it's a simple procurement process. What these streetlights do is they integrate solar and they integrate Wi-Fi and they integrate battery backups, and then they can also have EV charging in the bottom. So, you know, for parking lots, that can be, you know, some good benefits there.
So
Yeah,
they do more than one thing,
they do more than one thing.
which is crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and they light the roads. Yeah.
right. So the revenue would be coming from where?
The revenue comes from the solar, you know, the
Right.
solar savings. It comes from the battery backup that, you know, we can actually be a virtual power plant for the utilities, storing energy and letting them pull that energy when there are blackouts to be able to power the houses. It generates revenue from the Wi-Fi, from cellular handoff, and it generates revenue from EV charging. So four different revenue streams.
So if a city would do this, because obviously you can sell to a city, can sell to a private person.
Yep.
If I own a parking lot, I can call you and say, I want to install.
Eisenhower Health has reached out. We did a pilot at the Greater Palm Springs Economic Development Office. Sean set that up with me. And Eisenhower Health reached out and wants to pilot our streetlights. You know, they've got a couple new campuses that they're building and developing, and it could be really beneficial for them.
So when let's say, God willing, this takes place and the higher receiver going to order X, Y, and Z, and it takes place. So does Eisenhower get the benefit from the charger fees, the solar
Yeah.
fees, they get all that.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's a win-win.
It is. Yes. I deliberately designed it that way so that communities that are not as fortunate would have the capacity to upgrade their infrastructure. You know, because infrastructure is very expensive, you know, just because of the quantity. There are 250,000 streetlights in the city of Los Angeles alone.
Right.
You know, there's 55 million across the United States. It's a huge quantity of lights. So that's why if we could make them where they generate revenue and you can pay back that investment and then keep earning money
After.
after,
Yeah.
you know, it's like a 3-year return on investment with full features. Then that could be really beneficial for communities. And, you know, like we're working with the Palisades that burn as well as Altadena that
Oh,
burn.
yeah.
Yep, and LA fires. And both of those are looking at them because they need revenue to be able to continue to build their resilience. And so, you know, technologies like ours are that kind of like bridge.
Are you finding resistance from any city that has their own protocol and their own, you know, guidelines? Are you finding any cities, whether it's here or LA, a pushback? You know, we're gonna follow this, we're gonna follow that.
Well, there's always that.
Always, okay.
There's always going to be that, you know, alignment. But the cities have actually been really excited about it. You know, we've had out here, we've had the Coachella Valley Association of Governments reach out to talk. The IID has emailed and said, let's talk. You know, that's the utility out here. City of Indio, Palm Springs, Hemet, Desert Hot Springs. I just talked to the mayor of Desert Hot Springs. They're interested, you know, so then we have the, you know, more in the Los Angeles area, you know,
Right.
down in San Diego as well. So there's a large understanding as energy prices rise and energy demand rises, that these could be a really stabilizing infrastructure for communities, because it helps keep the cost of power down, meaning, you know, at peak hours when they have to buy from somewhere else, they can
Especially
pull from
here.
our lights. It's
Especially here.
local.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Especially
local.
here. Yeah.
So that keeps the cost down, and it also just helps with a local supply instead of, again, reaching far away
Right.
to find that power. It
Right.
gives it help. And utilities do really value that. We have a letter of support from SoCal Edison already valuing our 4 features: solar, EV charging, solar, batteries, Wi-Fi, and revenue. Yeah, they love those.
Even though for them that would be, it's sort of like putting them out of business, so to speak.
But they own a lot of their own streetlights. They manage streetlights for a lot of cities. So that, in some sense, that would also eliminate costs for them, and they'd be generating revenue for them. You know, it's the same value proposition.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Who knew?
I know.
Who knew? Well, since I want to close out with this, since you're in this world of technology, and there's a lot of controversies lately, I asked Sean the same question, so I'll ask you the same question. How do you feel about the data centers and the way they're being imposed in certain areas? And should they be? Should they not be? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I mean, obviously, you know, something has to happen somewhere. What are your thoughts on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of them. You know, I do understand the economic driver that cities look at and why they are attracted to them. I don't think yet they've solved their environmental issues, you know, their water usage and their power usage, and how that extracts from people. That was one of the biggest talks we gave at the Palm Springs Next
Oh,
is, you
good.
know, our technology is one that doesn't extract. Ours is one that gives back.
Right.
And can data centers reimagine themselves? They're smart. So go play and think and come up with a solution where you're not extracting from a community that you want to partner with, that you're figuring out a way to actually make that community better. And that's where this kind of conversation needs to move. And again, that comes back to the, you know, century-old way that we do business needs to change. You know, this is not you coming into our environment and pillaging everything that you need and, you know, thinking
So,
that's an okay process.
so do you think we're being misinformed when certain people come on and say, "Oh, we're not taking water, we're not using water, we're actually going to create jobs"? Is that misinformation?
You really need to break it down. You know, how many people work at a data center? It's a lot of computers, but there's not a lot of people, you know. And then, yes, water is needed for cooling. If they have a different way of cooling, then they need to bring that forward and really make it transparent. And then what's that power? We know that there's power involved. And how does that happen? I mean, it was interesting to think that the IID was going to set up a tariff. So if
Right.
you were a large consumer, you had less stability in your power and you had to pay a higher price,
Right.
you know? So, but then they need to look deeper, you know, data centers need to look deeper and do better at business than
Right.
they're right now.
I guess for the normal person like myself, it's all like Chinese to me. So when somebody comes out there and they say, "Oh, we're going to give you more job for the city, and we're not using as much water as you think," well, do I believe you, or do because I don't know what you're saying, and that's
Right,
why most of us are uneducated in that department. All we know is we don't want it in our own backyard, and that's fair enough.
right.
Yeah. So when somebody like you comes on and say the facts that I'm based on facts that we want to hear from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we're all using AI and AI's got some really great strengths.
Of course.
So, you know, we know this is a tool that's going to go forward and we don't want to write it off,
Right.
but we need them to do better. We need them to do better.
Good.
They're
I'm
going to
glad
be
you said
making a lot of money and they're going to be
a lot of money.
creating a lot of industries. So let's set it up now the right way.
There's no reason for the greed and for the
Yeah.
misinformation and the whole that old school system that got us where we are today. So when you hear that from, I don't want to mention names, people that obviously, have a lot of money and they brought in, to take just all these spaces and then tell you this, oh, we're gonna create jobs. And when it smells bad, it is bad. That's just how I see it. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Otherwise, you'd be really transparent and you would be really coming forward with maybe a big campaign that, made that transparent.
Right.
If you are so different, come talk to us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think consumers now are more educated now than we ever been. We're a lot more aware. We're a lot more awake.
Yeah.
And I think back in, I don't know, years ago, people were not as outspoken, and people were not as willing to put in the fight, so to speak. Now it's very different. Now you got 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds that are going out there and saying, I don't want this in my backyard.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Heidi, this is so good. I'm so thrilled for you, and I'm glad you came. I hope this was a chance for you to speak more about the product. I know you've been going around nonstop. For everybody that listened or watched, this is very exciting, especially for us here in Palm Springs and the Coachella Valley. Who knew? That's all I'm going to say. Who knew? But here we are. And if you want to reach out to you to find out more, where can they go?
To my website. You can find us at Base Studio. It's spelled BASESTUD.io. Base Studio.
It's .io. That's the key.
.io.
.io. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. And if you please,
or LinkedIn or social media, all of those,
Well, let's make it easier for them. So yeah. But again, I mean, I've learned so much about this in the last couple of weeks that I had no idea. And it's by basically, asking the questions and inviting you here. And I'm glad you came. And even in real estate, I'm thinking right now as real estate, this is all mind-boggling because it puts it all together. It's not this, it's all so together. And if I can, I'm more educated now than I was an hour ago. So thanks to you.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for watching, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.